Sachi Rajadyaksh, also known as Sachi. Firstly, lovely Devi, welcome to On VJ's playlist. What an honor it is to be hosting you on my channel. You are just fresh off a wonderful and a very, very productive 2022 with both your singles top, and if there's a sign, taking over, leading DSPs. And not just that, I think you have pretty much made your foray into the live festival space with your debut performance at the NH7 Weekender. So congratulations. Firstly, how are you doing?
First of all, thank you for that really nice welcome. I'm really happy to be here. I'm doing interestingly. It's a new year. There's always fun feelings that come with New Year's. But the way you summed up my 2022, I feel like I don't have that much to worry about. But I've been good. Thank you for having me. I've been following this for enough to know all of the other people that are from the indie scene that you've interviewed, the people I know, people I don't know. But I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
The pleasure is all mine, Sachi. Firstly, since we ended 22 with a lot of us just going berserk about sharing our year-end spotlights, year-end highlights. So many of us were sharing our achievements, or even a lack of it. We were just celebrating the processes of having survived a year post a very, very grueling, taxing, and a very overwhelming pandemic. But coming to you, we have to look back at 2022. What is your biggest takeaway?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me was working hard with like a common goal in sight. It can be really weird doing that in an indie setup where I don't have a manager, I'm my own manager. All of these things sort of get a little you kind of lose sight of why you started doing things. But I think if you manage to keep that in your head and do the work, magical things happen. Because for me NH7 is a really big deal. I attended NH7 as a student. I was in college till 2020. So 2018, I remember I went for NH7 and I was in awe of like everyone that I watched there. So I think the biggest takeaway in 2022 for me was, as long as you're doing the work and you have the right intentions, somehow at some point things will work out. It won't come quick, definitely not, but it'll come. And I think that's my biggest takeaway for sure.
Well, 2023 will also technically mark your 5th year in making music independently, since you began with Touch and Go back in 2018, which you collaborated with Ankit Dayal from Spud in the Box. So when you just look back in retrospect, how do you look at, how far have you come, since 5 years of making music independently?
It's really interesting because, first of all, it feels like a lifetime ago that song came out. And it was also one of the first songs I wrote ever. Releasing is one thing, but it's one of the first pieces of music I've ever written was Touch and Go. And for everyone else, it's like, yes, I've been doing this for 5 years, but 2020 to 2020, almost 2022, or like I'd say those pandemic years felt like a giant gap. Like, how you take a gap year in college? It very much felt like that for me, even though I was making music, not being able to attend these gigs, irrespective of if I was playing them, just being a part of the community and suddenly not having that option. It almost felt like I had taken a gap year from independent music, even though I was still writing and I was still making stuff. It's weird to look on the journey, though. I will say I the way I approach writing today, the way I'd say like understand why I do this. I don't think when I started off there was a clear vision in my head. At that point, it was just me making music because I really liked it, and I was a fresh kid in college, just like trying to figure it out. And now it feels a lot different. I know what I'm trying to say, and I have learned a lot, thankfully, from all the people, the wonderful musicians I've met along the way, including Ankit and Ayan and a bunch of them who've basically taught me and guided me through this whole process. And I feel like I'm a lot more equipped to say that I'm an indie artist today, because it is both those things. It's independent. There's nobody helping me out, which I love how I'm saying this again and again. It's quite it's quite an annoying
But that's the
factor.
idea. But that's the idea of being independent, right? As much
Yeah.
as you can, manage and take charge of everything yourself. I mean, isn't that? I know it can be overwhelming because, of course, you can, only bite as much as you can chew. You can only
Yes.
handle so many things at a time, and of course, you need somebody to streamline it for you. But at the end of the day, through it all, if there's anything, I mean, it kind of feels gratifying to learn something on the go also when you are doing things by yourself. Because I believe
100%.
while making If There Is a Sign, you also took charge of production duties with, of course, some inputs from Ayan, who is your frequent collaborator. Ayan Day, for those who do not know. But somewhere, I think in one of your promotional interviews, I did read that, just handling production duties for If There's a Sign gave you a sense of confidence that, you can attempt and, hone your craft further. Is that a fair assumption?
Oh, 100%. There's a lot of things that I love about being independent. I'm not going to take that for granted. I think it's the level of control and creative say that I get to have on things. And I guess that's the purpose of anyone doing independent music at all, right? Is the amount of free will and control we exercise over something we're trying to create. And of course, the things you learn along the way, like you said very rightly. So like producing wasn't something in my view when I was younger, because I was so far away from it. I didn't have any siblings or friends who were into this field. And so I learned production actually while I was making Stop, out of necessity, because Ayan was not here in the city during the lockdown. And of course, Zoom is great and everything, but when you're creating music, it's honestly, it's
Physical
nothing like
proximity is
being in the
important.
room.
Yeah.
So important. And I think that's why I started producing on my own. And it taught me a lot about my sound and about the way, there's so many ways to tell a story. A song can sound like a blues song or a country song, irrespective of the way it was written. That's all production. Production is such a big part of it. And I think learning that was a huge thing for me. So yes, in a lot of the things in being independent, that brings everything it brings is I'm very glad that I get to do that, honestly, and that's an option we have today. For example, even like doing the first tour we did last year, me with my band, that was all self-organized, right? There's no booking agent. There's nobody really in the middleman sort of things. You do everything yourself, and it's extremely rewarding. I will not lie. Like that's why when NH7 ended up happening, it's a very big milestone, because you put in that much work and done that much, to get to that place. But I think whenever I say these things, it's interesting because I'm a solo artist and I don't have anyone around me when things, and of course things inevitably go wrong, right? Like when you're doing live music, there's so much firefighting that you have to do at the end of the day. I think that as a solo artist is extremely hard. I don't know that many solo artists who have to do that currently, barring a couple that I've had the joy actually of spending time with in the last couple of months. I guess that's also in 2020. I tried my best to be around the community a lot more, even if it was not collaborating per se, just being around them and learning from their experiences and being supportive to each other outside of the work as well, because you automatically understand each other's experiences. I think that was all of the stuff that helped navigate that.
Basis on what you just spoke about, Sachi, two things that for me as an interviewer becomes immediate takeaways, sorry. Firstly, kudos to you that you landed a spot for yourself all by your own doing. You reached out, which is actually incredible because there's a whole lot of talk and a whole lot of banter going about as to how acts that are being programmed across festival lineups are the same. There's a huge repeat, a sense of repeat that is being seen across festival lineups. Everyone's talking about how you get a foot out the door only if you have connections, or only if you are justifying numbers. So many things withstanding, but for you to say that you got there, you got through because of your own doing, of your own reckoning. So for those who are wanting to reach out, what would you like to advise to them, that how like where should one start?
When people join the journey later in your career, and or midway, or at whatever point they're finding you, they don't really, they'll wonder, they'd be like, how has she been doing this for such little time and getting to play something like an NH7? And those people don't necessarily know that I've started 5 years ago. And to that, every year, probably after the first year, I have reached out to get myself a spot in that lineup, with whatever I had like maybe 3 singles or that one EP, whatever I had. But I think, and I'm glad I didn't get to be on the lineup before 2022, because it was for good reason. And that good reason to me is that I hadn't played live at all. Really had played my first gig with the band, with showcasing just my music, was late 2019, right before the lockdown. And then the lockdown happened, and of course, because the lockdown happened, like, the main thing to me is, if someone hasn't had the opportunity to go out there and listen to your set live, what you sound like, what your artistry sounds like, what are you doing in your set, it's very hard to get, like, it's almost unrealistic actually of us to expect to be on these lineups, because nobody's had the chance to hear us. And I think that's what to me is the biggest takeaway, is that the fact that me and my band were able to do a successful multi-city tour this year in the country, wherever I could get booked. It wasn't even like I was like, I'll do every single venue in the country, because that's also unrealistic, right? But if you're able to do that, and able to do that in a way where you bring enough people, or the right people, through the door to listen to you, and if they happen to like what you're doing, I think it's possible. And I think to that also, this thing of, when you have one foot in the door, or once you're programmed for one festival, you're programmed for all festivals. I think that's I understand why artists would like that, and I understand why it happens as well from a booker or a promoter side. I also understand why people get frustrated by it, because at the end of the day, we have like maybe a dozen festivals in our country. So to go to every festival and have the same acts playing is tiring, and it's you don't get to discover as much new music as you'd like. And I think that's why even NH7 was such a big deal. Even then, I just didn't want to, everybody has this thing of like hustling and being on every single show now. Now that I've done NH7, they're like, oh, when's your next show? And I was like, I don't know. And I don't want to know, because if I play every single thing that exists in the country in the next 6 months, then what do I do after that? Like, where do I go from there in the country? There's not that many avenues to showcase your art, and you want to also have new art to play, right? If I'm playing my exact same set as NH7 at the next festival, it's also not fun for my audience. So I would say, just like thought into doing live, and doing it in a very deliberate way, so that your best foot forward is represented on stage. And hopefully, if of course, hard work plus stars align, the right people are listening to you in that room, I think it's very possible for proper indie, non-managed, non-micro label artists to also get there. And it is very easy to get dejected as well. But like I said, I think the biggest takeaway for me was, I've been doing it for 4 years. The one thing I did right this year was I took the effort to go out there, play my music, and a lot of effort went into making that show the best show as well. Even if it's in like a smaller venue, like an Antisocial or a Swig, you have to put in the effort to make sure that the people coming in to those shows talk about it to other people. And I think that's the only way you get bigger shows.
But then, Sachi, when somebody like you, who is managing every single aspect in her musical career, firstly, how do you deal with the different challenges that marking your territory, as in independent, women musician is, because there is so many things that pose a hurdles before you. One being gatekeeping, one being not knowing and not having enough on ground experience or enough technical knowledge about what are the processes that need to be put in place, what are the promotional plans, what are the outsourcing outreach plans. So in such a scenario, how have you enabled yourself, or what have you told yourself, and how have you seen yourself through all of it?
That's such a fun question to answer. First of all, gatekeeping, yes. There's nothing I can do to change the gatekeeping. And I like to keep that in mind and keep that aside and be like, this is something I can't change, at least alone. And I think that change happens is when you start building a community of artists that are there for all the right reasons, are there to better the community and better each other's artistry. But that's not something I can take on by myself. And I like to keep that completely separate. But as for everything else you mentioned, I think the thing we miss as artists, and it's fair, is that we get lost in what we're trying to make or the stories we're trying to tell, and then we forget that at the end of the day, it's an industry. It's a job, and to get your music out there in this sea of content, I don't even want to just say music anymore, because that's not a reality. That's not true. It's not like 10
But
years ago where
isn't that a sad reality that art is now being looked as content? Like, where is the art is a big posing question. But yeah, I mean, I'm
extremely.
getting where you.
No, I share that. I wish I could show you how on a daily basis how much that frustration gets to me, because right now I'll be like, oh, everything's cool. But I know on a daily basis how much that bothers me. At the end of the day, it's a thing of what you expect from what you're making. If you want to be a pop icon, like one of the biggest names, if that's something you want, then you have to accept that unfortunately today everything is one thing, it's content. And in that pyramid, I feel like we come as at the lowest. Like music doesn't blow up as much as comedy would or a sketch would, and that's why Bo Burnham's music will do better than anyone like Gautier or Maro, like artists who are like, I'm just picking random names, but that's just it's the sad reality. But if that's what you want to do, if you want to be a pop star artist, you're going to have to take that route. I think it's better for indie artists that know that they're doing it for their audience, their community, and along the way they'd like to get more people to listen. Is it sad? It's definitely sad, but I feel like I said, like a lot like the gatekeeping, this is not something unfortunately we can't control it. There's some things we can do to control it. I'd say for me the biggest thing is making sure the community have built around along this line, and people who've stuck around since the beginning, I make sure that I'm at least reaching out to them and staying in touch with them and letting them know what new stuff is coming out. And I think the rest of it I did realize when I toured is that that's the best way to make yourself known. Unfortunately, in music, I feel like the reels won't do it. Also, it robs you of your soul over time. I did that. I did it in 2020. I didn't have the gigging or anything, and I started making these reels, these a cappella reels. And initially I really enjoyed doing it. I really enjoyed taking these 90s songs that I grew up on and like spinning them, doing like harmonies and doing chromatic harmonies, like fun musician things. And I think over time what happened was it became commodified, where every week people would message me saying, where's this week's cover? And I'm like, no. That's not what I was trying to do with this. I was just trying to make things that I enjoyed, and it really got to me. And I think that's why I've had these periods of really productive, times, especially through the lockdown, and then a long period where I really didn't have the creative juices to create anything. And I think that's why I stopped looking at my work as content. I still have to be realistic and understand that anything I put up will be roped into that. It won't be called art or music if I'm using Instagram as the primary means to promote it. And that's just a fact. And so you look at other things, like you look at emailing lists, which is like the biggest blessing I feel I have at this point. The amount of people that join that email list and respond to emails and, very eagerly wait to get updates about what's going on with my music. I think that's one thing. And then other things like Patreon and Discord, all these platforms that are specifically made for art and education and people that care about what they're consuming, essentially. I'd love to just go deeper and deeper into that. And it's hard. Like, I think knowing the music business side of things, I was fortunate. I actually went to business school, so I know a lot about ad stuff, or even if it comes to like social media, how to title your video and tag and this and that. And that's what I studied all through college. But at the end of the day, you do, and I love this philosophy for myself, because otherwise I'd drive myself insane, which is your input to the maximum that you can do. Because again, like you said, doing it solo, you can do 10 things. Like with your time, you can divide it. Maybe, okay, I'll send this to 10 people to listen to, and then half your day is gone and like sending those people emails, or you're making a reel to like make sure that on social media people know that you've released music. Just to know that with your limited time, if you've done enough to push your music out to the best of its ability, that's where it stops. I feel, as at least as an indie artist, but as a solo indie artist especially, I think that's how I measured it. But navigating to learn about that is something that I chose to do. A lot of people are okay not doing that and just, making the one post on release day and whatnot. But I really wanted to take that extra step and learn. And I had a couple of opportunities in different ways. Of course, YouTube is great for it, but also I had the opportunity of being a part of Gatecrash's, music retreat. And I was a part of that cohort 3. And I think I learned a lot of things there from different people and musicians, especially. Again, like I said, like hanging out with other artists really gives you other, avenues to get your music out there. So I think that was the best way to learn more stuff.
Sachi, at least in 2 instances during the interview, you mentioned about how you like hanging out with people, who share similar likes or similar interests, or who have a similar approach towards making music or developing art. But at the same time, Sachi, one flip side to this is that we are humans. At the end of the day, we are constantly trying to compare ourselves. The noise that we see on social media makes, insecurities are flying high and at large. So in between all of that, like how does one keep themselves centered and tries to keep objectivity and clarity, and not wanting to judge other people? How do you think can that state of mind be reached?
If you get the answer to this, please let me know. Because I honestly, I don't know. I don't know. I am the biggest, like, if anyone goes to my Twitter, and I'm very shamelessly tweet these things, it's really like, I enter 2023 with this massive imposter syndrome. And an imposter syndrome is a very common recurring theme in my life, looking at what everyone else is doing, especially because it's such a small community. These are people you probably know every other artist that's playing every other festival, and it feels very you feel complacent even, being like, oh, what am I doing here? What has helped me, I can definitely share. I don't think it really goes away. At least in my case, it hasn't. I do try to do a lot of things to keep it at bay, but realistically, I don't think I've been able to get rid of it. I was watching one of your other videos, and it was about constructive criticism, and in my head it was like, hey, nobody's going to be able to tell me anything I haven't already told myself. I've said all the nasty things I have to say to myself already. So if someone else is going to come up to me and tell me something, it's going to be done. So I think those thoughts and the comparison and the inevitable doom that is social media and the way it makes you feel about what you're doing, I've learned to live with it in two ways. One is if I'm having a terrible time, I reach out to even non-musician friends. Are like, I am blessed to have a good support system, but more so musicians. I think just having
Yeah.
a very candid chat with anyone else who's trying to do the same thing as you and just talking, you know, it that definitely makes you feel less alone.
Yeah.
Battling those thoughts, to me, the best way for me to fight imposter syndrome is actually to work.
Yeah.
And that's hard some days, of course. Like I do my therapy and I try to try my best to minimize that. But I think for me, the best way to get over um any block that I'm facing as an artist, in terms of I've compared myself to someone and I feel like a terrible, say, live artist. I try to get work that is not related to live stuff, but will make me feel less like an imposter or less like I'm not an artist and they're a real artist. And, I'm not touring, so I'm not a real musician currently. There's so many versions of it. And just accepting that sometimes you'll have moments of clarity and sometimes you won't, because it comes with the territory. I don't think anyone that doesn't do this life understands what it is to have imposter syndrome, because you can go to my mom would be the funniest in all of this. She'll be like, you get to do what you like, how can you have imposter syndrome? It's like, but of
Ah,
course you can. um and I think it's just, yeah, it exists and you have to deal with it and you try your best to deal with it. And um yeah, I really don't have an answer to that. And if you do, and if anyone does, I'd love to know.
because you spoke about how, while making your own independent music, you also were fortunate to find other avenues of work. I think with 2018 alone, the way it started, very eventfully, or, for your, whether it was Touch and Go, the single, or whether it was Clarity, the EP that you eventually released, which had three beautiful songs. And that's how I guess Four More Shots Please also happened eventually, at the start of 2019, with, you singing at least three songs in the first season of the very popular Amazon Prime show. So how did that opportunity, come to you, if I can ask?
Um, as much as I hate Instagram today, I think I really loved it before it became the center of all of our universes in the lockdown. I think all of the most amazing opportunities I've gotten have come through Instagram. Like even MIKEY, I think the way he probably heard some of my covers on Instagram, and that's how he found um my work. And I had the pleasure of having this quick phone call with him, and I was such a baby. I didn't even know what I was going to go into for work. For me, it was just like, oh, cool. Like, this sounds fantastic, and I'll come in. And then I went in and I was like, oh, this is huge. This is not your
Yeah.
usual video, your usual jingle. It's much bigger than that. And I think, again, there at that point, I was extremely regular with whatever I posted on social media. I was a big into covers, because that's how you learn. I think the way you find your voice a lot of the time is by mimicking other people and figuring out what is you in the middle of all of that noise. And I used to do a lot of covers, and I believe that's how they found my voice. And we did this quick phone call, and I went into the studio to test for a song, and the song is actually one of the most loved songs now of the season. It was Yahan, but it was the English version
Yeah.
of Yahan. It wasn't the Hindi one. There was an English version called
Oh.
Here, which, yeah, it was originally done in
Oh.
English, and that
Okay.
is now, I believe it's there on season 3. If you went and you heard it, you'd probably, if you watched the show, it's
I
there
know
somewhere in
that
season. It's
I've
there.
seen the third season, but I don't recollect having heard the English version. But I think I'll have to check that out.
It's there somewhere in the back. It's a little bit sneaky, but that was the one I tested first, and they wanted to do a Hindi version of it, and I had the wonderful joy of working also with Ankur because of that. Um, and I didn't know what to do most of the days there, and they were extremely supportive. And at the end of the day, they liked how my voice sounded on those songs, and so we ended up doing full versions of them. And I honestly could not explain to you how it really came together for me. Like I said, I feel like a lot of this is just doing the work and leaving the rest to luck and the universe and whatnot. And sometimes it works out, and it's pretty cool. And it taught me a lot about you know, I write every single one of my own lyrics. So to be in a room with someone that's written the lyrics and to really understand what they're trying to say and using your voice to do that, I think those are all skills I have to owe to playback, to really take the words and make them come alive, I guess.
But I have to say, I mean, everyone has had such diverse views about the show. The show does draw a lot of polarizing reactions, online. And even I've seen my views about the show shift, from good to bad. But as far as, keeping certain songs from the soundtrack on my playlist comes to mind, it always has to be Yahan and I Don't Do Love Anymore, which I think was sung by Medha Sahi. Those two
Yes, it was
songs.
Medha.
Yeah, so those two songs, they are a part of, those somber afternoons where I just stare, outside into the open window and I'm just thinking about life and everything else. And that's when I know I can always tune into those songs. So firstly, thank you so much for Yahan. As a music lover and as somebody who has personally really spent a lot of time, contemplating and pondering upon a lot of life lessons with that song. So thank you for that. I believe, Sachi, some of your earliest influences, as a musician while growing up were Ed Sheeran and Alicia Cara. Is that correct? If I've found that correctly?
Yes.
But who else, apart from the two that, I mean, these two were the obvious names I came across during my research on the internet. But who else, I mean, like how much did your immediate surroundings, so when I say immediate surroundings, from your parents to your peers, how much of an influence were they in shaping your musical journey?
It's really funny. I do think those two artists were the reason, I think, at the time I, applied to Berkeley, or the reason I started writing. And you'll hear a lot of it in Touch and Go, and probably the first EP. But now when I look back, especially with the newer stuff, with Stop, with If There's a Sign, with the more recent stuff, Do or Don't, it's stuff that I heard long back as a kid, like stuff my dad probably introduced me to from the 80s. Like it started with rock, so it used to be like these like your AC/DCs and your Linkin Parks and your The Cure and Deep Purple. I think that was the stuff that really first got me into English music, because before that I was heavily just listening to Bollywood stuff, as you do, right? And I think those acts, and like Michael Jackson, I think that was the main thing that sort of got me to this side. But I think in my latest stuff, there's so much of Paramore. The way I write, I think I've started realizing the way I connect with lyrics is a lot like Paramore, and it gives me so much joy that they're back in action and releasing music and touring now. But I would say there's Paramore, there's Amy Winehouse, there's very varied stuff. So there's also Linkin Park, and there's also newer acts like Rosalia or Silk Sonic, which they're not really new. They've had that sound there as Anderson and as Bruno Mars, there. And I think all of these acts, because I grew up listening to so much different kind of music, I think that has filtered down into the way I write today, because every release, I think, and that's what was the fun in producing stuff, was that all of these acts somehow like filter out into the stuff I make, be it in the lyrics or in the music or just the way I approach writing. In that sense, I would say I'm very, very much a 90s, 2000s baby. The way I write, I feel it's always centered around that little lyrical hook or, mainly the feeling. I don't think I can really write anything that doesn't surround a feeling or a story, because that's something I picked up so early on, and that was there through and through, irrespective of the genre. Like Linkin Park, still very, very vivid storytelling. And the same with someone like Amy Winehouse or even Katy Perry, you know what I mean? So I think
Yeah.
all of those, the mixed bag of listening to stuff, which I will thank my dad and one of my cousins for. I listened to every genre there was. So much so that I went to a metal gig. I went for Scarfest like a month ago, and people there were like, "Oh, you're here?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course, I listen to everything." And they were so confused to find me there. I was probably one of the youngest people there, and I don't think they expected me to be there just by virtue of me being more R&B soul leaning. I just feel like people don't expect me there, but I think that helps because I think that translates to the way I do my live stuff. Like, sure, that maybe the music isn't rock music, but when then I get to go on stage with my band, there's
Yeah.
so much that we do with that then. For example, when we played NH7, we played Stop as the last song. And everyone, I remember in the comment section when NH7's lineup was announced, was so outraged with the metal thing. And I understand, like, if you're a
Yeah.
metalhead, you don't have acts that you would have liked to be there. But for me, the biggest win was after we were done with our show, when I came down and there were these two people, one of whom literally came up to me and he's like, "That last song, I'm a proper metalhead and I really enjoyed that. Like, I didn't expect to come to your set and enjoy, the way I would another act that I'm more familiar with. But that end, and that I knew why. And the why is just that there's so much, when we do it live, we do it really heavy and we do it all out, very rock, and we add like a bunch of distortion and just have fun with it. And I think uh, I really enjoy that about when I write, and I refuse to do the whole making one kind of thing, because at the end of the day, to me, the main thing that matters is story. So if the story wants me to go full out and use like a rock distortion pedal, I'll use that. Or if the story is really quiet, like a yaha, then it's just me and the keyboard, and that's it.
Yeah.
But that's what matters the most, I guess.
Since you spoke about songwriting and how you're constantly in admiration and in awe of people who are able to phrase feelings and emotions into words. As someone who is a firm believer of community feeling, if I can ask you to choose some of your favorite singer-songwriters from the Indian independent music community, whom would you pick?
Oh, there's so many. First of all, there's some that everyone will know. Like there's a Tabachak. I really enjoyed. There, again, it's not deep lyrics or anything. I just think he knew how to capture the feeling exactly the way it was, that innocence and that like light sensibility. I think that was one really nice record. But I think today there's so many more. I think the one that stands out to me very readily, and he's a dear friend now, it's SIDHARTH BENDI. He's one of my favorite artists to look at in terms of the way he songwrites. But at the same time, if I had to pick people that I grew up listening to, of course, there's it's hilarious, but they're not even so like there's no lyrics. It's like Blackstrat, I listen to Blackstrat so much, and even there, without words, it's a lot of storytelling. And that was another act that I like absolutely love. And I think currently I also have been listening to a lot of music from coming out of Bangalore, and I'm really enjoying that. So I would say off late I've listened to Frizzell a lot, and she's a brilliant, like I think she does a really good job of telling that story really, really well. And it's such a iconic singer-songwriter sound, that she has her own spin on it and the way she tells the story. And I just love her new music as well. So there's Frizzell, there's Mally, of course. I think she always has done a fantastic job of telling that story. And like I don't know who to not mention at this point, but I feel like with singer-songwriters we have such a plethora of really good storytellers, and in their own ways. It's really there's also my band, which is basically you know who. It used to be they used to play as you know who. They have a bunch of new acts now that they play as, but you know who also, like Sarthak is one of my favorite lyric writers out there. Honestly, he plays guitars for me, but he's such a fantastic lyric writer. I literally don't know who to not name. So I would say that of late, the newest addition of these people for me to like actually keep on listening would be Frizzell. And there's also Rudy Mukta that I really enjoy. Yeah.
Let's talk about your frequent collaborators, or should I say, the friends I know that you can always turn up to. There's Brent Toro, there is Ayande, and Sarthak Karkare, like you rightly mentioned from you know who. Because it's also important for us, I believe, Sachi, to also celebrate amazing people around us who are our allies, who are always wanting to put in their best foot forwards, and give further flight to our dreams or our initiatives or our enterprises. So just a little bit about the professional and wonderful working equation that you share with these three gentlemen.
It's actually crazy. Sarthak and I went to the same school. He was my senior in school, and I didn't know him for the longest of times because there was such a big age divide. So I never interacted with him as much in school. But all of these people, so Ayan is my earliest collaborator.
Yeah.
He was the reason actually that I even released Touch and Go and the first EP. I came by him because of I was doing
one second.
backings.
I'm also sorry. I left out Ankit Dayal from Spar in the Box, but even he was
Yeah.
very, very crucial for Touch and Go. So yeah,
it's actually funny. So I actually met them around the same time, and it was at Ayan's studio. I'd gone in to record backing vocals for another artist, and that's how he heard me sing for the first time. And he was like, "Hey, do you have any of your own music out there?" And I was like, "No, I don't know how to do that." And he was like, "Why don't you play me something? Just come in one of the days and play some of your songs. Let's see if we can work on something together." And it actually started off that simply. Like all I did was I took my guitar to his studio, and Ankit was there. I remember this clear as day. I'd walked in and I actually played Breaking Out to them as the first ever piece of song. I was like, okay, this is a song that I very much relate to at the moment, so I'll play that for you guys. And I remember Ankit was eating in a corner. He's like, "That's got a lot of potential." And I was like, these guys are really good at what they do. What is going on, right? Like I was like 16 or 17 years old at the time, so it was really insane to me that I got to hang out there, play my songs to them. And I think from day one, both Ankit and Ayan have just been mentors. Like yes, they're collaborators, but they're both a very big reason for me to be able to do this, like to realistically think that, hey, this is something I want to do and can do. They both have a very big part to play, and they hate it when I talk about them like this. But it's true. And I think, so with Ayan, I think a lot of the earlier days, there was just this unsaid ease of writing with Ayan in the room, or, being able to come up with song ideas. Like Better 24H was a little bit into our relationship of like writing and making stuff together. But by then we had such a good rapport that we were able to do that song in 24 hours, which was just like a stupid whim I had. I was like, I'm turning, 20. I want to spend my birthday writing a song and finishing it in a day. And he was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So I went in, and it was purely because of the rapport and relationship we had created. And I really feel like if you find a producer that does that for you, it's extremely lucky. Everyone I know has, a couple of producers that they have that equation with. And it was just easy. And we just became the best of friends and collaborators. And that's why all of those things were possible. And I think with Ankit, he's just such a fantastic person to get any kind of, criticism or direction or help, anything you need. Ankit is always a really good person, and he'll put it across in the best of ways. He'll never do it in a way where you're like, oh, maybe I should just leave this idea, because he'll never encourage you to do that. He's always told me none of these ideas can be ditched. All of your ideas should live somewhere on your laptop, somewhere in a folder for any rainy day when you feel like, hey, that's actually cool. And Ankit always encourages that. So I never had any kind of fear or animosity when I was creating. I always had people around me that were encouraging every idea. And then in the process of editing, they'd be like, hey, this doesn't work. Let's do something else here. That's their role. And I think they've done that for me very wonderfully. And with Brent and Sarthak, they actually came in that 2019 show, it was my first showcase gig at Levi's Lounge. And I really wanted to do it with a band because that's the joy to me of playing live, is to be able to have that chemistry with the band members on stage and really, drive that live experience. I love playing solo shows, but I really wanted to do it with a band. And that's when I reached out to Brent and Sarthak and Shashwat, because and basically, who, Sarthak, Shashwat, and Johan.
Yeah.
And we put together a little band. And at that point, I don't think I saw that much into the future. I was just really excited that I got to play a showcase. And I was like bamboozled with the fact that Second Sight agreed to open. And I was like, Second Sight is opening? Like, it's just weird things when you're there. Like at that age, to me, it was like, oh, how can they be opening for me? It wasn't like, hey, it's just 2 acts on a bill. It's much clearer now. It doesn't work that way anymore.
Wait a
But
minute. You have opened for the Vamps and for Shaggy. So I don't because I don't see why does that not add up?
yeah, it's pretty big. Again, both those things came to me because of Instagram. And I genuinely, for the longest of times, thought that people were pranking me. Anytime they would call me and they'd be like, hey, you want to open for Shaggy? I was like, you're joking with me, right? Like, this doesn't happen. So yeah, I think it's a huge deal. It's just that for me, when I was playing there, Second Sight, I listened to them a lot. Like when I joined indie, there are all these really cool bands. They're another example of really good storytelling. So the fact that they opened and that show went really well. And I think for me, it's really important to have a band on stage that I trust, to have my back, to have the songs back, to give creative inputs. They're not just there to play the chords and, like be the backing track. They're there because they're all really good at what they do. And I think with all of my band, especially with Brent and Sarthak, it's very easy to communicate what I want to do. Is it okay?
There was a lag. There was a lag.
You can hear me, right?
I can hear you, but
is it okay now?
No, somebody's internet connection is unstable.
Interesting. Is it? It should be okay now. Now I can. Yeah, I can see you again.
Yeah. So
I
think you were talking about. I think you were talking about. I think with Brent and yeah, you were talking about.
Yeah, basically pretty much all of my band, but especially with Brent and Sarthak, it's very easy to tell them what I'm trying to go for, and they really, when I'm not, like, if I'm going astray, they'll tell me, and I actually like that. I like them coming in and being like, hey, maybe instead of this here, we should do this. And there's just a tremendous amount of trust. Like I was joking about this, is like, after we were done with NH7, somebody asked me like, oh, so which after party are you going to? And I was like, I'm not going to an after party. I'm just going to go chill with my band. I'm so happy that we just did that. And I think that's very important to me. And that's why that
and I
band,
saw the artist area. With all the vanity vans, and that there was that whole shed, if I have to call it. But
yeah.
I thought that was much more well spaced out, and if you all needed a moment to just get like just settle down after all the anxiousness that you'll have, after all the anxiety that you'll have gone through, on stage, having performed, with all the euphoria, surrounding the crowd. I'm sure you'd have wanted a moment yourself, and that was very, very well kept. It was like that secluded corner where nobody was going to bother you. You had all the privacy, and
we had a van. I have to talk about that. For me, that's wild. Like indie art. When do you get a van as an indie artist? We had a whole van, and it's a massive band. It's a 6-piece band. Plus, we had crew. We had like 2 members, visuals, and like people like who were doing videography for the show. And so it was like 9 of us, and we had the van to ourselves. And that's, to me, the best part of doing this is after the show, getting to hang out with the people that were, part in making it happen. I really don't care about the after party. It's like everyone that wants to be at the after party can really go enjoy, have their fun. But to me, it's like being with my band, going in the enclosure and finding all the other artists that I don't get to meet. I got to meet Rebel, and I got to meet Rudy for the first time. I never met her before that, and it made me really happy to be able to do that. And it was really, really well organized for our side of things. I would say I really enjoyed going into watch all the other acts after we were done, and then coming back to that little space where we could just take in the fact that this has happened, which of course Ankit knows. Ankit's done NH7 enough to like have it all taken in, but especially for me and the rest of the boys, it was a very
New
new
experience.
experience. Some of them again have played for other acts, but I think it was a very big deal for me. Like to the point of before it was happening, I always do these rituals before shows. I listen to Hosier's song Sing, okay, Almost Music. No, two different songs. Sing, Noise Making is the song to Noise Making. And I played before every gig throughout the tour. It was like a band ritual where I would play it in the cab on our way to the venue or whatever. But at NH7, my adrenaline was so high. I was like, I just need to make sure I get onto that stage alive. Anything else will take care of itself. But yeah, they're just, I love my band in the sense of I know they'll have my back. If anything goes wrong, it's almost like a little family. And that's really important to me because most of what we do is so berserk and bizarre that when you have that safe space with the people that you create or with the people you perform, it's not that hard anymore. Like it's a very fun collective journey to have. And Brent, of course, he's so brilliant. Sarthak is so brilliant. They're so good at what they do that it becomes easier for me. And that's why it was so fun to have them even on the song. Like so far we've been programming everything. Stop was completely just like programmed stuff, so if there's a sign to be able to have these guys on and play live and bring their artistry into the songs, it made me really happy that we got to do that.
To conclude our brilliant interview, Sachi, all I want to ask as we conclude is, what are the grand plans for the year that's already rolling out? I'm sure it would be very premature of me to be asking you, what are the next new releases up, in the pipeline. Of course, you may want to take your time on that, but in the immediate horizon, what do you see yourself doing?
So I actually, it's not premature at all. I actually got into this year with so much clarity, I think, because of NH7 and everything that I wanted to do. Definitely the first half of the year is just me holing up in this room and a couple of other rooms and writing. I'm trying to work on this really cool project, or don't know what it is really so far. Like, I don't know if it's an EP or an album, because those are all strategic decisions at this point. Like, you can't decide to make an album anymore and just do it because people don't listen to albums anymore, apparently. So all of those things are...
That's not true.
Apparently that's not a smart thing to do. Wherever I go and I'm like, hey, I want to do this album, and they're like, are you sure you want to make an album? So it's just like all of those strategic decisions I haven't made yet as to what it is, the project, but what the story is very clear to me. And I'm currently working on getting all of those tracks written, because I've realized, like, if I'm writing in real time, it's just more honest and more current for me. That way it's more fun for everyone listening as well. So a lot of writing in the first half, and then second half, definitely a lot of gigs. Hopefully a winter tour of some sort where I can finally play Bangalore. I've never been to Bangalore and I really want to go there and play.
Never been there even as a visitor?
No, I've never been to Bangalore, which is crazy to me. I've been to Kerala, I've been to pretty much everywhere else in the south. I've just not been to Bangalore. So I'm really excited to be able to do that.
Bangalore, are you listening?
Yeah. And I think along the way, just a lot of collaborations, because I had the joy of meeting so many amazing musicians last year, that all of that is being put to work right now. So a lot of people that I admire and have admired for the longest of times, just to make something that just comes from within, no strategy, nothing there. And I think that's what can be expected, and hopefully a lot more of social media time, but in all the right ways. I refuse to be content creator, but I will make things for social media. So all of those things. I hope that answers your question. Like, I think that's the best of whatever I can give away. And hopefully some some cool songs that don't belong in an album or such, just stuff I've written long ago. I had this song called Nether, which I teased for a very long time last year. I wanted to put the demo out, but that should be one of the songs that comes up next. Just something I'm excited to do. There's a couple of songs, but that's one of them.
Well, more power to you, Sachi, manifesting each and every amazing dream that you spoke about on the show. More power to you, onwards and upwards. And here's hoping that you have a magical 2023 and then on ahead. Thank you so much for talking to me today, and hope to see and hear more of you in the coming future.
Thank you for having me. This was so wonderful, and I'm excited to see what 2023 brings, and hopefully also just like see a lot of the new indie acts I know on your show.
That's certainly a guaranteed thing for sure.
Okay, amazing.